And the final piece in some notable clusters, as it stands at the moment, certainly, is entitled Skull Nebula, Cetus. So quite an ominous sounding way to end any kind of cycle. Skull Nebula, Cetus, and it was the last video we edited, and we realised that we'd done 8. Again, I think they're all of equal value. I don't think anyone particularly stands out. Quality.
Equal quality.
I mean, in terms of quality, of the production, in the video and the music that we put together. And Skull Nebula, can you just describe, because there's just one image that you think of skull, that's it. Can you just describe in the video, how do we maximise the way of making that look original, instead of just putting a skull in the image?
Just going back to what you just said, this would probably be the final piece of a full 14.
Right, so the final 14.
Because Cetus is only, the sun is in Cetus, which is the whale or the sea monster, for only one day. In fact, it's only a few hours on one day in a year, March the 14th. So it would go from Aries through to Cetus. So there are 5 more to do to have one in each constellation anyway.
Yes.
And yes, so the skull, well, one of the most iconic images of the skull is Damien Hirst's. It's got a funny title, I can't remember the name of the piece. It's something about belief in God or something. It's an odd title for this sculpture, but he's basically encrusted a skull with diamonds, so it's worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. So of course we have to use.
It's an iconic modern image. That's most people will recognise that.
But this piece, apart from the skulls, which do play quite a good role in this video, is actually dominated by the constellation this time. We've got whales almost everywhere. There's the whales bubbling up the water to get the fish up to the surface from on top aerially, which looks beautiful. And they make this Fibonacci spiral in the water, Fibonacci series spiral, which of course
it looks like the scroll of a viola.
The scroll of the viola on the top.
Which, thinking about it, and this is the first time that had just made that connection with me, we could very well have used that at the scroll of the viola with the shape of the water bubbles made by the whales.
Yeah.
But it's a universal in nature. The Fibonacci series, as many people have learned more and more recently, that mathematical sequence applies to, I think, any growth pattern in nature.
I use it a lot.
So
use it, the Fibonacci rhythmic patterns, as did Yanis Xenakis when he was alive, and other mathematical things like the I function and the E function. Anyway, and then there are whales doing this wonderful ballet in the water, is another one, and then there's a whale tail disappearing under the water. So we use footage of whales a lot in this one.
A lot of nature.
It's
so good to. In fact, all of the moving images in this are nature. In fact, it's all the sea based, as you say, whales, but also actually a human, a lady swimming, as it were, a mermaid, but actually a real woman swimming through water, as well as the whale image. But that's all water based or sea based, should I say, in terms of the moving imagery.
Returning to the theme of the piece overall, I think one thing we forgot to mention at the beginning is that if you look at the layout of the orchestra, if you like, and the viola soloist walks around during the piece in a sort of pattern.
In the stage plan, the proposed stage plan.
It's left so the viola soloist can walk through. And the viola soloist is the traveller, if you like, in the universe, going around looking at these amazing objects and absorbing them. And this swimmer is almost like that lone traveller, but underwater this time. She's the underwater traveller.
Yes.
Free in the water, like you would be if you were floating in space.
So, yes, travelling, wandering, searching.
Well, I think of
maybe never actually, maybe always knowing that you're never going to find out all of the answers to those big questions, which, as as the famous saying goes, the ultimate answer to the ultimate question, and so on. And I think that's where we all are in those terms, and we all recognise that. And then this piece, I think that's the overriding theme of this piece, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And again, as you say, that proposed stage plan, where in this case myself, the soloist, would walk around, maybe not constantly, but certainly through the sections as a reflection of that, rather than being stationary in the conventional sense of being a concerto performer or a solo performer on a stage in front of an orchestra. But what that will require, though, of course, is possible, but it's going to be a challenge, is either to memorise the piece, because I can't actually walk around unless I had one of those stands which they'd use in a marching band, which I suppose is a possible option. But again, the association of that is too obvious.
And it would also be difficult to do
but because of the, again, we're talking about outer space and connecting to, not science fiction, but certainly many elements of science, and the science is of perhaps using some kind of stage costume. Again, I'm not going to dress up in tails and a bow tie for this. It's one option. And I'm not going to dress casually, but we've had a few thoughts about, without overdoing it, some kind of a costume which would be appropriate to the thing. And one of those ideas might be also very practical, to use even some glasses, as we know glasses now, where you can actually have images visible in front of you and the two lenses of the glasses. As in virtual reality gaming, that's now it's not something I'm involved in much at all, actually, but very widespread, isn't it? And that's been around for a few years. So that kind of technology is something that we're thinking about. That would be for the live, when we get around to actually fully producing this as a performed piece.
Just to return quickly to the theme of the Wanderer, it's basically the subject of a lot of my favourite literature, going back to the Canterbury Tales were wanderers, Chaucer, there's Dante, the Divine Comedy, where he goes on this journey through hell and then purgatory and heaven. Of course, there's Don Quixote, who travels. It's a road movie, basically. And then, of course, there's Faust, goes down into hell in Goethe's Faust and wander. It's the idea of
Wotan was a wanderer,
and also
a very big
Schubert's
wanderer.
Wanderer, the wanderer fantasy. It's a big theme, this idea of
questioning and searching
and moving.
But it's to do with that, isn't it? It is about that eternal.
That's what this piece is kind of about. Yes.
So it's a modern take on that theme, which
it's a long-running theme.
Contemporary take on this idea. So
we're also thinking of using holograms, weren't we, in a live performance?
If we can.
The images from the space on a projector, or even in a planisphere. That'd be not a planisphere. It's called a planetarium. That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Well, so on a final point, you mentioned the planetarium, the one that at the time I knew very well, just because I'm a Londoner, as the planetarium next to Madame Tussauds, which itself is not very far away from the Royal Academy of Music.
Which is where
it's just to tie up our presentation today and our introduction to some notable clusters. You started the conversation at the Royal Academy of Music, didn't you?
Right, yes.
I just mentioned that because the
just down the road.
planetarium was just down the road, and unfortunately that doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, it's gone.
The planetarium, as I think, unless it closed to be refurbished, I don't think, like the Royal Academy itself was, I don't know if it's closed, but it's certainly refurbished very extensively many years ago. I believe that planetarium no longer functions, which would be a great shame.
But there's a good one in Bangkok.
But elsewhere, of course, there are. And it's a piece that we think could be introduced in a number of different locations and situations. So as well, I started, I think, this introduction by saying, because of these videos we watched them, we think they already stand as little homemade classics of this type of fusion, this type of not storytelling, but sort of idea conjuring, marrying of music and image, which again I think you mentioned that the installation idea was a wonderful one. I think setting for these 9 videos.
Well, I've worked with quite a few contemporary artists on installation work.
Yes.
Yes, it's very enjoyable and interesting to do that. But in
So-
this case, we're the artists as well as the musicians. So
Yes.
the aesthetics of association.
The aesthetics of association and some notable clusters.
Yes.
Composed by Marcus Tristan, performed by myself as viola soloist, and after that extensive description, we very much hope you now enjoy watching them. I think they're best watched one after another, not as a symphony, but as a sequence which is as long as a substantial symphony.
Yeah.
So I think in those terms,
And wearing headphones is probably better than.
and because of the quality of the music and the audio, it is essentially first and foremost a piece of music. The quality of the headphones, sound system that you listen to this on, as with all great music, of course, will make all the difference.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and there's so many details in the musical writing of Marcus Tristan, very intricate. I mean, I'm fully aware that many details I haven't noticed yet. It's that type of music. It's not.
A lot of it also gets lost because I tried to make sure the viola was to the fore.
Yes, well, all of this comes into play, as we all know, in all, well, not all, but much, certainly orchestral music, ensemble music, where balance is a never-ending.
And in the live performance, that'll be a big challenge, the balance, especially in Virgo, this crushing, warping black hole.
But with the right engineer and the right equipment, these things are possible.
It'll go swimmingly, as they say.
We hope you're enjoying some notable clusters. And we'd very much like to hear from anyone who has any comments about them and any feedback. So thank you very much for watching and listening. Okay, and thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Daniel. Good
Okay,
night.
so
and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.